Sonia, you have the job of supporting some of our pilot teams in designing curricula, and as a consequence of doing that, you've been heavily involved in, indeed, the key author of something that's been coming for a while, our rough guide to curriculum design. Now, we've always known, because of it relates to Project AIM 1, that what we wanted to do is give programme teams an enhanced environment in which to design courses and give them enhanced information. And early on, we thought that it would be useful to do it in this format of a rough guide to curriculum design that wasn't too prescriptive. Yet we're still writing it, and we're towards the end of the project. Can you take us through some of the things that you think we've lost by not having it yet, but also what we've gained by not having it yet?
I think the key thing in terms of what we've lost is that a number of the pilot teams have felt that they are unsure why they are doing certain things, and they feel that they are able to engage with the system, but they don't actually know why they're doing what they're doing. However, what we've gained by not having it is that if we had written this 6 months ago, what we'd have actually ended up with is something that was driven via this is how you use the system to design, rather than this is the philosophy and these are the reasons why you're engaging in a good design process. So in real terms, we've gained more than we've lost.
I mean, my perception from that process is that one of the reasons for having a pilot is that we wanted to explore how people would use the system, and thus we would have some way to work out what the positive points of that were, what the negative points, how to steer people away from that. And I suppose we wouldn't have been able to do that had we tried to predict it all. We had to go through the pilot process to be able to see what people actually did.
Absolutely, and I think it's not just how they use the system, it's also how they approach the design process across the board, because telling a course team that there have been historical problems with course design and that they've been driven by a need to fulfil regulatory requirements and to complete paperwork and so on and so forth, telling them that there's a problem but not actually exploring that problem with them doesn't actually facilitate better design. What it does is make them question why they're doing what they're doing. So the rough guide will allow us now, writing it with that hindsight and with that test information and that client base information, we'll be able to write a guide that is driven around them understanding the broader philosophy of curriculum design, and not just this is what you need to do to get your course approved.
Yeah. And do you think that it will give it a sense of legitimacy from when we roll it out, that the fact that the rough guide has actually been written from the experiences of a real course team, or a number of real course teams actually going through the process, as opposed to what we could have written from CELT as being an idealised ivory tower approach of this is how you should design curriculum 101, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. This kind of emerges from real practice that took place during the pilot phase.
Absolutely, and I think the other key thing as well of sort of embracing the lived experience of those around you is you understand the barriers and the enablers to good design. So you allow almost a dialogue between the rough guide and the person reading it. And also our approach to the rough guide, I think if we'd actually produced it 6 months ago, would have been that systematic, process-driven document that wouldn't necessarily be very user-friendly. What I think we've now got is a document that would allow them to understand the principles of the project, to be introduced to those principles in a soft and sort of gentle, almost nurturing way, and then ultimately for them to be able to follow the process literally from the beginning to end, but in a narrative format that actually is about that lived experience and understands and appreciates that, you know, these are some of the conflicts you might come up against, these are the ways in which you might deal with it. And also that the resources necessary for the rough guide, I think, would have been an ivory towered perspective if we'd done it, you know, a year ago, because it would have been the 101 approach, and we wouldn't necessarily have been able to demonstrate how those things embed themselves in the actual design process, the lived experience. Whereas now we have that narrative, and we have course teams that are happy to support the document that we're now producing, and are able to comment on it and say, well, actually, I think this might be more useful, and to add to it. So actually, the rough guide has become iterative.
Yes, it definitely has.
Which I think is in line with the
Yeah.
project philosophy.
Absolutely, thank you.